He's not. Hi everyone. Hello. Happy New Year to everyone. If it is your New Year or if you believe in that, and if not, I wish you an okay year, whatever you name it. My name is Deb. I pretentiously write something called the Kink Drink on Fair because it is quite pretentious, isn't it? The idea of these workshops is they were started, I don't know, about quite a while ago. And they're very popular and then they're going to be taken down to nothing. That's never really happened. So the idea of these is that they're called healthy mental practices. So any questions that come up can be about kink, polyamory, communication, mental health, epigenetics, bingo, about us, why we are the way we are. I've been submissive actively since I was 17. I have switched a lot in that time. It's certainly not me anymore. It just isn't. I really prefer a connection, keep telling you, before I like anything else. And that's what matters to me. And a lot of my kink isn't particularly sexually based, but there's always sex in my kink, if that makes sense. It's more about the connection. I'm also a psychotherapist. I've been practicing for a fair while. I have an MSc. I have about 7 postgrads for what it's worth. I have an MBA for what it's worth. You can tell my stuff is about nothing clever enough, can't you? The idea of these is that you can ask any question you like. Well, I don't know about that. Any question you like, and hopefully I can answer it. And if I can't, we can talk about it. Because I do not profess to know everything by far. And what normally happens is that I'll say, okay, let's hand over to you. Have you got a question? And everyone goes, no answer, no. And then at the end, you ask me 30 and I don't have time for them, or you try and grab me afterwards. So these depend. I don't have anything prepared. They're not on a theme. I also run a workshop once a month with my best friend, Poppy, and that's free of charge as well. We do that on Zoom, so anybody can come anytime they like. One of them is themed and the other one is a Q&A as well. I do find the Q&As can get quite challenging with some of the answers sometimes, so it gets quite interesting. So it is over to you. If you've got a question, I'll just leave it with you.
Nicely done.
Perfect timing.
Up to you. So I do not believe that people do not have a question about kink, about polyamory, about communication, about relationships, about mental health in where we are. There we go. Thank you.
I've not really had long enough to actually phrase it as a question.
To formulate it, I hear
you. So there's a lot of parts of kink that I'm interested in, but they don't necessarily evoke sexual arousal. And when there's a lack of sexual arousal, I find it very hard to get out of that mindset of this isn't arousing me, it's not right, but I'm enjoying it. And I get stuck in that and how that feels to me. I don't know really where the question is, and it's more of a concern of how to get away from that mindset. I
hear your concern. So if I kind of summarize and feedback, and then we'll see if we've got a question there. I think a lot of us are told in society about what's right and wrong, what's acceptable and what isn't. And we're told that kink is sexual often, and it's a turn on, but that's a fetish, and fetishes are different to kink. So a fetish is when I need something to get off at the end, like I need to see your high heels, I need to feel rubber, I need to smell leather, and it's a complete connection. So a fetish is where I desperately need that to be aroused, and that's the only thing that will help me achieve orgasm or feel turned on and start that process, where there is a big difference if you're then looking at, but actually, why can't you just enjoy something? Why for you does it have to be sexual? Because you said you enjoy it.
Yeah.
So where does that criticism come from for us? Is anyone here, I am going to be gender specific because of a little bit of research for a while. That doesn't mean I believe in that, so please don't hear that. If you look at my writing, I think you already know that about me. So has anyone here been brought up as a very macho male man, dominant type of person? Anyone been brought up a little bit like that? Yeah. So the first time you punch a woman, let's say, right, consensually, not in Tesco's, don't try that. So the first time you maybe punch a woman, or you start slapping her around, or you start doing something,
Fighting, kicking.
yeah, biting, kicking, punching, let's go for extreme violence. Or even if you do something mild like you fucking worthless cunt, take my cum. Or you're doing something, or you've got your hand wrapped in their hair and you're like, all the words that you use, whether it's humiliation, whatever it is, let's go. How do you actually sit with that ethically and morally compared to the way you've been brought up?
For me, it's I was very imposed. So it was very imposed on me to behave a certain way, and I found that while I found myself, it also came with a lot of like discovering that I like to be kind of physical, but in a very sort of mutual way, and it coming more of a I used my strength in a consensual way to achieve an effect where it's like these people want this, and I find the people who want that where I can express myself in that way. I can, type something.
And was there a moral conflict?
Initially, at first, yeah, it felt weird. The first time I kicked someone in the arse so hard that they started crying, I did feel a bit weird. But but then they were able to reassure me that it's what they wanted. I think it's one of those things of like, how do you tell that is what they want, and it's not, and you haven't just done a bad thing, and letting go of that shame does take some practice. But it's sort of being aware and being a part of a scene like this. Did help me. I got a lot of advice. I asked people for advice and how to deal with these things, and just talking through it and reassurance, because tops need reassurance just as much as subs and bottoms. And that's a lot of things on the surface level you don't hear as much. But then as soon as I realised that I could ask for reassurance while I was doing the kicking, that was very validating. Yeah, and that process and being open to that. Helped me deal with a lot of it pretty quickly, so I didn't struggle with it as much, but it did come up and was like, oh, is this okay? Yeah, okay, cool.
And let's go for another cliche. Anyone been brought up as that sweet little girl at all? Anyone been brought up that way? Yeah, that's sweet, be a good girl. So if you become the village bike, the slut, the whore, the cunt, the person, all of those beautiful names that we have for people that just want to have sex, it's beyond me. And we have so many more words. We have a lot of words for how does that sit ethically and morally? That you've just done a gangbang with 20 people and you're completely come over, you're sweating, or you're sitting. I'm not saying this has ever happened to me, but I'm just going to give you a scenario when. So you're.
Drop the mic.
I can't believe I'm so in front of you either. That's interesting. But so like, you're literally pegged in a balance. So you've got your hand on two cocks, your mouth like down to your throat. You've got a cock in your cunt in your ass, and other people are watching, and you are literally balancing. And that's a very sexual position. And then what's going through your mind is, God, if these people move, I'm just gonna smack my nose and break my face. But the dilemma that comes afterwards sometimes is, oh my God, did I do the right thing? Because of our ethics, morals, and values. And I often advocate for people on the scene to find their ethics, morals, and values. Because the more you find that, if this is what you like and it's okay with you and you balance it ethically, it doesn't matter whether it's sexual or not. For me, the question for you is, why then do you find that wrong? Do you have any idea why you find it wrong? This isn't right, you said. Why not? Do you know? Like, I'm not asking you now, you don't have to answer because it's really personal, but it's a really good question to ask. It's one you could take away, it's one you could think about. It's a bit of a dilemma, isn't it? Because we are told that these things should turn us on. But actually, if you're doing something you both enjoy and it's mutual and it's consented to, I'll come back in 1 second, and it's all of those things, why does it then have to be sexual? I think we do a lot where we think it is okay to do sexually because as soon as we're turned on, our minds are quite warped. We make very stupid decisions. Anyone here that made a foolish decision when they're being turned on? Yeah, okay, most of us.
Wendell,
yeah. I think you're thinking with the wrong brain. So being turned on can be a little bit more of a reason for us to do things and get away with stuff. If you're making that decision, it's a bit like being pissed or stoned or off your face or some made with some kind of drug. It wasn't my fault, it was that. It wasn't my fault. So it becomes an okayness, it becomes a permission. A lot of people come into therapy because they want permissions over feelings and over situations. sometimes when we're not turned on, we're like, fuck me, I'm doing this in the cold light day and I'm not sure if I should be, and is this okay? And that for me is an ethical and moral. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that comes into it for you?
It's definitely some sort of conflict.
Yeah, okay.
Without going into too kind of detail.
Yeah, no,
So
listen.
it goes against what I thought who I was.
Yeah, so that's one to work out. I mean, you can talk to someone about that, you can have conversations. And I think the fundamental has to come from consent. If somebody says, I want this and I want you and this is okay, at what point do we not believe them? I don't know about you. Like I have a very Heinz 57 history as far as I'm not English. I sound incredibly English. I'm a first generation immigrant. I'm a third generation immigrant on the other side. I've got dual nationality. I've got a lot of different ethnicities, colours, everything you name it in my past. So I'm not terribly British at all, or I sound terribly British. How do we then find that balance about those things, how we're brought up, what it means, the influence on us, and the way culture tells us to be? It's quite a dilemma, isn't it, of what, again, that's why I really firmly believe that if we find out our ethics, our morals, and our values, we resolve conflict a little faster, because actually, are they yours or are they somebody else's? Who here is terribly British?
Yeah.
Good. Stiff upper lip.
Okay, mate.
Cue beautifully. Basics, you know. Until they open that gate, then we're all a bunch of cunts, aren't we? We're going to kill someone to try and get through. And there will queue. And in fact, there is a queue. We even bloody join it. We don't know what it's for. We're bizarre, like that British heritage of stiff upper lip, get things right, all of those things. This is what one should and shouldn't do. So what we have to work out is, what is our shit? How much of that is imposed on us, how we're brought up culturally with a large C and a small c? What does it mean? And also, epigenetics come into this.
What does that mean?
So anyone here an epigeneticist, or anyone know about epigenetics?
Is it about generational?
It is. Someone said they do as well. It is.
There's many workshops.
I was about to say the exact same thing. I am, because what are you teaching me?
Okay, no, but it's good because I can make up shit now. You can't call me on that. So what you've got are genetics. So genetics is your coding system that decides for you, like a book, what your skin color, your hair color, your hair length, your texture, those will be influenced by things, but genetics decide the very basics for you. When you talk about epigenetics, what you're talking about is the influence of an environment on the genetics that you then pass on and on you. And those can be trauma, experience, different things that you've experienced. So the two groups of people who have transgenerational trauma, so when we drop transitions, and this might be a very unpopular thing to say given the political climate at the moment, is it's not every person of colour. That is not the correct phrase for this one. I'm really sorry, but it isn't. However, if we have anyone who is black, and I'm really going to go for that phrase on purpose, epigenetic, that's a real transgenerational trauma because of years of abuse and how it is. And the other group are Jewish people who have transgenerational trauma. When you think about the Holocaust, when you think about different things that happened, and the person that's really interesting about that is a woman called Rachel Yehuda, who works with a geneticist from Glasgow. And the reason she's written a lot about it is when 9/11 happened, she was working with Holocaust survivors. And she was like, why are their children not okay too? And why are their grandchildren not okay? Is it because they talk about how Mengele stuck two twins together or opened up a pregnant woman, or like really graphic, horrible things? Is that their history? She was trying to work out what did this mean. But then it didn't make sense because they didn't talk about those things. Were they cautious? Yes. Did they want to get in a train? No. Did they carry food in a bag? 9 times out of 10, yes. Well,
I'm curious what the role of levels of cortisol in a pregnant while someone's pregnant will have. Would that have an effect on
yeah, and it's connected. So I'm actually going to say that. So you're absolutely right. No, it's a great question, and it's right. There was a question about cortisol. So what she then found was, when she looked at all these generations and she was testing 3 generations of Holocaust survivors, is that it was bizarre because their cortisol levels were below normal, which is quite shocking. Anyone know what cortisol does in your body?
It regulates fear. It's not just regulate, it's responsible for it.
Fight,
Yeah,
fawn,
so
freeze,
it's fight, flight, freeze, friend, fuck,
fawn.
flop, faux, fawn. So there are about 7 or 8, and we've read it about adding the F's to those. So it helps calm, it helps regulate, it helps. So when your sympathetic nervous system jumps up and your parasympathetic, they're a bit like a water bomb, they can't both be up at the same time. So, and actually you need your, when you're having a panic attack or something, there are things you can do to get out of it probably within 20 seconds, but they're quite dramatic and they're quite somatic and they're often involve a shock because it makes your sympathetic nervous system come up. I feel like I'm teaching a biology class now, it's very bizarre. So cortisol is actually very dangerous to you as well. Like some of us get injected, not quite cortisol, but I'm going to go with similar. If you have a dodgy hip or a dodgy shoulder, whatever, boom, in goes an injection, your knee's better, you start to feel better, and then that lasts for about 3 months. You're only allowed 4 a year. You're only allowed 4 a year if we then take the principle of cortisol. If you just, what it does, if you're very highly stressed all the time, it just brings you down and it just calms you. This is all it's doing. It's just, you would not pass a GCSE with this, right? So this is all it's doing. I don't think it should be a GCSE. So it just helps calm you down. But if there's too much in your body, do you know what it does to you?
Affects your
Go away.
Sorry, go.
No, obviously it leads to lots of cardiovascular stress.
Absolutely. It'll give you a
It
heart
ages
attack,
you
high blood pressure.
internally.
Yes, absolutely. So
Is your glucose levels.
yes, it's
Digestive issues.
yes. So it's really damaging to your body basically, and your mind and everything else as well. So the body won't keep doing that to itself. So if you are highly stressed, your cortisol level, if this is normal, becomes below normal. So it's an indicator of stress, of issues. And I know you still have something to say about that. So it's an indicator of stress. So what she did is she tested everybody's cortisol levels. And even when the babies were born, their cortisol levels were below normal. So she started to get very interested in as to why. And one of the PhDs I thought of doing is the transgenerational epigenetic scripting of sexually submissive women. I want to read it. I don't want to fucking do it, but I really want to read it. It's interesting. Like, does that have an influence on us? Is this why I am this way? Was it to do with my mother's trauma, my grandmother's? And we know that epigenetics and the influence of these things we've tested past 13 generations. And you've probably heard of things when you think about genetics as well, the way you read them, is that, you can have an Asian couple who have a white baby, and he immediately goes, what the fuck, who have you been sleeping with? But it was his 20 generations ago, or different things happen. We know that it has an influence. So epigenetics are part of that book, that genome, that either scrub out and Tipex or add extra things in. And the cortisol levels make a difference. And unfortunately, when 9/11 happened, everyone know what 9/11 is? I don't know. Well, you never know, I'm still asking. Big claims, big issues, lots of death. She said, can any pregnant woman please come forward? I want to test the theory. And she got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of volunteers. And for any woman who was in the 2nd or 3rd trimester of pregnancy or had placenta intact, so the baby was still connected during that time, it's not that they just watched it, but it's maybe that they lost a loved one or something happened to them in some way, shape or form. Guess how many of the babies were born with abnormally low cortisol levels? Do you know how many as a percentage?
80%.
You know the answer to this, won't you?
90.
90? Any other guesses? 6, did you say?
I was going to say 90.
90, it's 100%.
Wow.
100% of the babies. There's never been a piece of research like that. So 100% of the babies were born with post-traumatic stress disorder in some way, shape or form. And they received a lot of care. I'm about to go into politics. You will, some of you may disagree. I'll be surprised actually some of you disagree considering you're here, but you might do. Trump changed that. Of course he did. But they had a lot of care and a lot of protection at that time. So they have all of this. They were getting, that's one of the only answers, unfortunately. There isn't a physical change. You can't inject cortisol. You can't change those systems. You will make someone incredibly ill. So it also ties into the, are we born this way? And what happens and what does it mean? And it's a huge influence. So is it our culture? Is it my great-great-great-great-grandma? Who is it? Like, what happens and why? So I just think we need to come to terms and understand all of these things influence. And has that answered your question enough about the cortisol, or did you have more?
No, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify, like, just for my nerdery about like so chronically high cortisol levels cause the low cortisol levels.
Yes, so it's all about consistency. So if you constantly have a high level of cortisol, what the body then starts to do is become highly stressed. It will have cardiovascular responses, it will have all sorts of issues. You will develop more and more physical issues. And insulin does play into that. So, yeah, and the only way you can change insulin resistance is to shape your cells, and that's exercise. But unfortunately, whether you like it or not, there is a correlation between children doing less physical exercise, not doing PE at school, and all of those things to our mental health and to our well-being and to our physical health. Because actually, what we know from somatics, if we're talking about vagus nerves and vagus theories as well, what we know is the more people move, the less stress they feel. So we're not moving as much, therefore we're feeling more stress and having more responses, and we live in a really stressful world anyway. And we see things we shouldn't see. If you are reading that, I really don't want to get into this, but if let's say you're reading, let's take some of the latest traumatic things, let's talk about Israel and Palestine, I'm not going there. When you see like some of the videos of beheadings, of the visceral nasty stuff, your brain is not supposed to see that. You are not designed for that. None of us, human beings aren't designed to see that level of trauma because we're not supposed to know about it. If it happens in the village next door, you might get the odd telegram of, hey, there's a saber-toothed tiger. I'm being facetious clearly. There's a saber-toothed tiger in the neighbourhood, chuck a toddler or a grandmother at it, it'll be fine, and then it'll go away. We're not designed to know this level of stress, of hatred, of anything else as well. It's not good. A bit like an iPhone, I'm really old, I'm 58, so I've seen such massive changes, even the invention of the phone. Not the invention of the wheel, I'm not that old. So it's like we've seen a lot of changes. You used to get an update on your iPhone and go, fuck, I don't even recognise that shit. Give me back the old one. And your brains want that as well. So what's interesting is the influence of shit, I want to go back to what was. We shouldn't know this much information. We're not designed for that level of overload with our more primitive structure in our brain compared to our prefrontal neo, different parts of our cortex that respond differently in different ways. Whereas this older system that we have, like people call it the reptilian brain, it's called limbic system, but people call it different things. This is really responsive. If I picked up this glass and I threw it at someone in the room, I'm not going to. So if I throw it at someone, you'll have a variety of responses. Some of you will go, what the fuck are you doing, you stupid twat? And you'll be very aggressive and probably want to attack me and knock it away. Some of you will just go catch it and go, what? And some of you will not move at all. You'll let it hit you. And you think you know what you will do. You don't. You don't. It is a responsive system. However, we're also pretty smart. And this is a really smooth part of the brain. It's the same as a rat's brain, really. You know that really smooth text. Why am I asking if you know what a rat's brain is like? Have you seen?
I've seen one.
Yeah. If you've got a human brain, it's very folded, isn't it? It's got lots of creases, lots of bits and pieces and crevices. I'm assuming most of you have seen a human brain, not personally or eaten any. Like I'm just talking about in a book or in a class or whatever. But if you look at a more core-based animal type brain, it's just very smooth and pink. So hasn't got the same synapses. And fucking hell, it's getting so complex. We haven't got the same synapses and neurons in the way that we fire off, the way our brains fire off and work. So all of that has a big impact on us and how we work, and even influences whether you are kinky potentially, whether you are queer, who you are as a human being. We know that all of these things are passed down. We're not quite there proving that kinky people are born that way, but there is a guy called Richard Sprott who is really doing the research now to say, actually, I think we might be, because of epigenetics, because of other things. And of course, when you know something, it's much more readily available to you, isn't it? When I was growing up, there was no internet. So when I started and I met someone who liked this sort of stuff and went, fuck me, so do I. And it was quite a surge. I could feel that in me. That was interesting, but there was nowhere to read about it or to look unless you went to the library. And believe me, when you're 17 or 18, you don't want to go to your local library and say, have you got anything on being a bit weird? Because you don't quite even know how to voice it. And there's no internet. So you're fucking Encyclopedia Britannica. Am I fucked? Am I okay? Who am I? And I was at those marches that made a long time ago. in the 80s, I was on those queer marches that enabled us to have our rights, that enabled us to be different people if we, in fact, fall under that queer umbrella. They're not the marches today, which are glitter and drugs, mainly, and still fighting for our rights. But in those days, it was kettling, it was bricks, it was hatred. You had so many extreme right wings and skinheads and different people, and that's not all skinheads all the time, I do get that. There was so much violence, spitting, it was horrific to be part of. It was a very different feel to it. But then when we look back now, actually, that's interesting. How much has society changed? Is it worse? Is it better? And culturally, where do we go with it? So all these things come into our fucking brains. I'll come back, I promise.
Just the sort of side of it. I totally get the whole genetics and PTSD. My family tree is a lot of trauma over generations.
Yeah.
And it kind of has there's a photo of you that you can understand this sort of that side. What about the dom side and how that comes up? Because I'm actually more dom, I lean towards it side, but there is this history of trauma, PTSD, that sort of things over generations, lots of traumas on both sides of my family. So I'm just curious about, so you can see this linear thing of how you could end up being on that sort of more submissive side. What about the dom side?
So there's no proper research on that, and my answer would be, it's interesting in how do we decide how we're going to respond to something. So when you hit someone, some people will just collapse and say, please stop hitting me. Some people go, if you fucking hit me again, I'm going to take your eyes out, you cunt. So we respond differently. Is that our brains? Is that our power? That is to do with culture, and it's going to be to do with epigenetics as well. And actually, 10 people are about to walk out. I'm going to argue that an old dominance actually has as much personal security and self-assuredness as we assume that they do. It's their way of getting power. It's their way of being in control. A lot of us, some of the time. So it actually could still just be a trauma response, couldn't it? If we've got fight, flight, freeze, which we know about, we've also got friend. That's clever, isn't it? We've got fuck. A lot of people fuck rather than, or will have sex even when actually they know they don't want to, but it's the safest thing to do in that moment, so they won't fight. You've got foe, you've got all these different responses that we have, and part of that can be taking charge, making sure. And then if you then go into the whole patriarchal principle of this is your position, I do think we need to put things into perspective from a historical point of view. Listen, kink was around in fucking Babylon. Like, it's been there since the beginning of time. There's a really couple of interesting books that you can read about the history of kink. There is proof all the way through that people were kinky, where we see dildos, strap-ons, whippings, all sorts. I'm not talking about with whipping Egyptian type slaves or hieroglyphics. I'm talking about people doing it for pleasure. Massive orgies, all sorts of things happening. So it was very much used. It's been around forever. And then as we get more aware, it goes more into hiding. I mean, Victorian times were very, very oppressive, that everyone was fucking in the park. It really was. But also, everyone who was fucking in the park was also dying from syphilis or gonorrhea as well. So as we've allowed more things to happen, we're not killing people off. We've got antibiotics, all sorts of different things that allow us to exist. All the communication that we've got, our ability to read and to learn, all of these things start to influence the things we want to go for. And a lot of us aren't, do you know Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Anybody? Who doesn't? And we'll come back to it. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what you've got as a psychologist, you said this is what you need to survive. And your base core at the bottom is, I need to feel safe. I need to have a home. I need to be able to shit. I need to be able to piss. I need running water. And actually, our society, as much as we don't think it is, we are fucking privileged. You have got a roof 9 times out of 10. Again, not everybody all the time. So our very base core needs are met more than we think. And eventually it goes all the way up the ladder to spirituality, although some people argue it should be around the other way. Actually, we need to find ourselves. You try finding yourself in a war-torn area, you're not going to meditate because you're frightened of a bomb going off or being shot. Right? You are not going to be in that mind frame. And there are next to no mental health issues in a war or a dangerous environment until afterwards, because we all fucking survive. That's a very well-known set of research. So if our safety and our very base core needs are taken care of, we can start to think about what we like and what happens in those different things. And actually we live pretty safely nowadays. Not always. A lot of us have trauma. A lot of us have danger, a lot of us have been brought up with those things. I certainly have too. I can give you numerous experience of my own as well. So they influence us, but they're not permanent always. That actually that drip of trauma on a child can actually be worse. Much more complex PTSD compared to a one-off situation or a bomb going on. So all these things influence us if we then start to feel safe. And then we're moving into what is it I like, what is it I want, what am I entitled to, what is my brain telling me? Oh, I quite like pleasure, I'll do that, that's quite exciting. So we're quite pleasure based. A lot of us are quite like that. I'll come back to you in 1 minute, so maybe you had something, I'll come back to you if that's okay. You had a question as well.
It's a bit of a pivot, it's not on
That's
the
okay.
topic.
Was yours on the same?
It was the beginning. but
Okay,
something
can I
else.
come back to you in 1 second? Thank you very much, I really appreciate that. So what was yours or statement? It's all right, it's not a test, I promise.
A couple of things.
Go on.
One, and maybe it's to do with what you talked about at the time. One, right at the beginning, where you talked about the difference between kink and fetish.
Yeah.
But I wanted your take on it again so I could really get it. But then the next thing was, when we look at time in kink, some of my experiences involved almost like people talking about I've been involved for this length of time, as if to say that's sort of some sort of benchmark. And for me, it doesn't matter the time, I still feel here. I'm here.
Yeah. So I've got a real issue with someone saying I'm experienced. Define experience for me. As a start, I really hate this whole thing, especially, here we go, so gender-based again, I apologise. I really hate this principle of younger women looking for much older men because they are experienced. What does that mean? Like, what if that person started kink 2 years ago and hasn't done anything? Yes, okay, life experience comes into it. But actually, you've got someone who could be 25 and have been doing it for 8 years. Maybe they start when they were 12. I'm not saying that's okay. I'm not. However, we also starting life very young. I read a really interesting article by this 18-year-old who said she gives the best blowjob on the planet quite a few years ago, and she graphically went into what she did, and she gave you actually a really good guide on the basic, on the principles of the cock. This is and of a blowjob, and she was actually technically really correct. And people were going for her and saying, "What do you know at 18?" Jesus, again, like the youngest dad in the UK is 12 years old. Like you could have had years of experience of sex. Whether we're talking legality, I'm doing a writing at the moment about law, justice, facts, truth, and perception, because those things get so confused, which comes into this around experience. What is experience? I actually wrote back, my counter was, I think what you said is technically brilliant, but I think you only have to ask 2 things, and it is ask him. That's how you do it. That's it. Because we don't always necessarily even follow our physicality. So for me, experience is actually even misused nowadays and lied about and used as a almost not a consent violation, but becomes a bit of proof, like it's a badge that
I
you've
felt
got.
like a bit beat around the head with it, like, oh, haven't you been around for this long compared to somebody else? And I was like, why are we comparing?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Because it makes us feel good. Comparison makes us feel more powerful or better. We often think empowerment comes from if I smack you on the head hard enough, your energy will go through the floor and I'll get it. What a heap of shit. However, that's not kind, it's not nice, but a lot of us do get that because we don't know how to create it ourselves. So comparison does come into it. Social media makes us compare because, hell, like, look at that body, look at that body, look at that person are the epitome of what we deem a success, and that's a very strange thing. It could be the car you drive, it could be the house you've got, it could be the clothes you wear, it could be the body shape that you've got, it can be the money that you've got. Actually, why isn't it the kindness, the person, the understanding, the openness, the willingness to listen? Why don't we value those things in society? Because we have to survive.
Yeah, Robert, to just add on the what do you classify as experience, I would, after getting the scene, I kind of hit the ground running and was like asking as many questions as I could possibly. And I think if someone was to ask me what I think experience is, I would be like, how many mistakes have you made and what have you learned from them?
One of my favourite questions, and you will get this very soon. So, kind of dating that person. No.
Is it kind of?
You will get this question too. So, one of my favourite questions is, when it's gone wrong for you, what have you done? And if it is going to go wrong for you, what is your plan? Oh, fuck, I've prepared you. You're going to have the best answers ever. Because I do not believe anybody when they say nothing has ever gone wrong. I can tell you now I have violated consent as a switch. Oh my God, you need to cancel me now. And I'll tell you, we kidnapped, this is many, many years ago, we kidnapped somebody, not really, it was agreed and everything. And she was this Amazonian woman that we tied onto the back. I've told this story quite a few times. So we had this St. Andrew's cross bed, lifted it up, tied her on it. Fuck me, she's strong. Like this is so exciting to her. It's exciting to me. And we had the list from her Dom, her partner, been together for years and years and years, of exactly what you can and cannot do. I'm really into that. I was into that before it was even okay or trendy. And it's not even trendy, it should be here. Consent is something we should listen to, but then we can't go so far into consent, we can't see that actually just things go wrong sometimes. There is a clusterfuck, there's misunderstandings, shit happens. What's your plan for when shit happens? And we were doing all this stuff, and I slapped her around the face pretty hard. That woman broke half an oak bed trying to come at me. And I was like, I think I'm going to die. Do I need to write to anyone or say anything here? Because if she smacks that round, she's broken half the bed on the hinges, iron hinges screwed in, solid oak, she's ripped half of it off. It's all come apart. I've been tied to that bed. I know how strong it is, and I'm going, oh, I'm going to die. And I didn't know what to do. And my partner at the time was trying to calm her. I fucking kill her. So I really did think of it. And she really wanted to attack me. And I was like, I don't understand what I've done wrong. I feel really confused. And I looked at the list again. And I was like, there's that. Okay, the only thing I can do is phone him. So-and-so, help. I did this and I slapped her face. Oh, fucking hell. So I forgot to put that on mute. Did I violate? Did he violate her consent? The truth is, I did. I'm responsible for that. And there was a lot of talking down and sorting, and this a very extreme masochist. So she just had a great time after that because she just got very, very beaten. And I think even my partner's arm was really hard. There wasn't a lot in it. It was so complex. But I learned from that. I will never again play with someone by proxy. I will ask you or whoever it is because I'm never going to be put in that position again. And I learned something. Did I mean to? I think intent matters. I can tell you of times I've had my consent violated hundreds of times because things go wrong. They do. And I think it's how we respond, what we do. And I think an apology is an action, not a word. And I think we have to really work out what that means and the implication of it. So I do think it's complex.
Just on the topic of expertise, for my day job I do exploits. And they require you to have 10,000 hours.
10,000 patch of anything, yeah, that's a very common level. One of my best friends also does the same job I do, and I think she's got around that, so she's definitely an expert now. But where do you go if you've got 60 or 70,000 hours? Are you an expert? Like, what are you, and what does it mean, and in what? Because if you've been practicing kink, can I pick on anyone for a second? Just ask, like, what's your favourite kink?
Drinking piss from pussy.
Drinking piss. Can I ask you what yours is, or you don't have to answer? Please don't if you don't want to. Just say no, okay? Can I ask you what's yours?
Can I answer that I don't know? Like,
Yeah, because that's fucking healthy, and I really love you for that. Yes, you can.
Like I was just saying to him earlier that it's weird that I've met people that I know, and suddenly I'm like, oh, am I in the kink world? And he was like, yeah, absolutely you are. And I don't feel like I am. I don't feel like I know what practicing kink is.
I don't think I do either on so many levels. I can give you a technical answer, and this whole thing about expertise. My supervisor, who runs Pink Therapy Group, which lots of people go to, will tell me I'm one of the 2 top experts in kink in the UK, and maybe even around the world, which is a fucking great big compliment. I don't even know what it means. I don't, because I just don't feel I know enough or I've learned enough, because it's about human beings. And all our research is gender-based, age-based, white-based. There's nothing out there that tells us anything else. So we haven't researched the majority of the world. We just haven't yet. So I think what you've got to learn is you, as that's why I said about ethics, morals and values. We have to learn ourselves for this. And actually, when I meet someone who says, yeah, I completely know what I'm doing, I'm not okay. That is such a red flag for me. I'm an expert. I know what I'm doing. I don't have to worry. You know, we have to understand that it's mainly women, sadly. Women die from this shit. So like choking strangulation within the kink world, we see that as quite casual. There's dark talk, there's freak talk instead of TikTok. And actually, you've got 16 to 18-year-old young girls saying, if you haven't got a bruise, look at this. If you haven't been choked out recently, you're just fucking vanilla and boring. Do you understand that choking is one of the most dangerous things that we can do? We think it's waterboarding. Actually, it's not. It is good old-fashioned breath control. You will die in under 2 seconds.
I have a question.
I still need to come back to yours.
I have a question about the practicality of choking. Is so when I'm being choked by someone who has a lot of experience in choking people and the experience of doing it so that they lose consciousness. But for me, I'm not losing consciousness whatsoever over quite significantly over the time limit that would be expected. Do you have any ideas?
It depends. So there are different forms of choking. Honestly, if a few of us who know what we're doing, we could choke you out in under 2 to 3 seconds, without a doubt, guarantee it. So does the person want to? Are they frightened to go somewhere? Your oxygen, how you work might be slightly different, how you experience things. But if you do it, so you've got different forms. You've got air deprivation when you stop air and oxygen, that takes a hell of a lot longer. You've got a blood choke hold. Look, blood choke holds, you know, you watch all the films where they've got someone around the neck and they're still fighting and then they kick them and you're like, it's just impossible. It's impossible. I mean, maybe maybe there's something off place about you physically. I don't know. Like, I definitely know my face is off place, but that's not some weird personal opinion. Or my nervous system is. My daughter has hypermobility spectrum disorder, and that's often interesting. You went like that, so do you know something about that?
Oh, that's cool. I have one. So it's
Okay, then it's really relevant. So that's interesting, isn't it? You just fall into these things naturally. So when we have some conditions like Ehlers-Danlos, hypermobility, whatever you want to call it, it might mean that your nervous system is slightly differently placed. I need very different dental injections than I do to anything else. I have a lot more than anybody else. Anyone here a natural redhead? You have a very different system response to anesthetic genetically. And in fact, if you're a natural redhead, the anaesthetist should be asking you about your history, what happens, and how to anesthetize you. You also have a different pain response if you're a bottom, if you're naturally redheaded. This clearly isn't natural. I know it's shocked.
Also bleed more as well.
Yeah, believe me, there's so many interesting differences. But hypermobility is also genetic. We know that people who have, it takes an average of 17 years to get diagnosed with hypermobility or Ehlers-Danlos. I have a daughter with it and chronic vomiting syndrome and a few other things. And it must have come from it. I was really hyperflexible when I was younger. I don't have it to her level. And on the most extreme level, your organs cannot be held and balanced in your body and you will die in your 30s. That's the most extreme level. And there's a whole range of different issues that go all the way down. I always say, if you're going to play with someone with hypermobility or Ehlers-Danlos, you have to learn them and their bodies because their responses are different. So yours are probably different. Offset nervous system, all sorts of different influences. So that matters too. You should be asking the fucking questions before you play with anyone anyway. Mental health, physical health, how are you doing? What are your normal responses? What is normal to you? How are you today? What drugs are you on today? What have you taken? Have you got a headache? How are you feeling? I went through chemo. Do you know? Anyone here had chemo? All right, it's 1 and 2. Fucking really. All right, you know, fuck off. So you're not 1 and 2 in it. Oh, surprise coming. No. I feel like I've just gone online at the Book of Mormon. Have you seen the show? Yeah. Oh, okay. There's a bit in it where he says, thinking I'm gonna get cancer too. Oh shit. And did you know your piss, your urine is still full of chemotherapy drugs for up to 48, if maybe not a bit longer
I thought you were
afterwards.
saying you could reuse them then. But
Yeah, definitely not. So if you're piss drinking or pissing over someone and you've got a cut or you're swallowing, do not do it for at least 72 hours after chemo. So, but do we know this shit? Maybe we should fucking research it and learn it, shouldn't we? So offset systems are interesting. Everything has an influence on us. I do think if you were very properly choked out, like anyone who's done very high level of self-defense or anything else as well, could definitely take you out, especially if you go to the crook of the elbow and you've got different things.
Tried a lot of different ways.
Okay, it might just be that your system is slightly off. But then I'm not playing with you. I would then be really interested in trying to experiment and see what makes your mind go a little bit fizzy first. Is it?
Not try what's worked before. But
Don't go for
try
traditional.
new way.
Yeah. And I'm still going to say I've got a very extensive writing on it with videos that tells you all about breath play. There is no safe way to do breath play. Can we please get that out? There is no safe way. Have I done it? Yeah, fucking hell, of course I have. And I've loved it at different times, but my blood pressure is slightly higher now. I have had cancer for a second time recently, but it's not a secondary. I have had other issues. I do that a little bit less now because I actually want to live. So we have to make different decisions depending on age, experience, meds, everything else as well. And that's not to say I still don't love it. Your nervous system might be slightly off, especially if you have hypermobility, and it might be how stretchy you are. When we start to look at estrogen comes into that as well. So if you then add things like ADHD, Jesus, we get complex. So a lot of people are being diagnosed with ADHD. It's all about estrogen as a precursor to dopamine. For those of you that know how it builds and what it does. I'm talking like a doctor and a fucking psychotherapist today. This is ridiculous, but it all has an influence on us of what we're looking for and the hits that it gives us. But if our system is off, we don't get it in the same way. Same that an ADHD brain is slightly different. We don't get those things in the same way. You need to experiment with slightly different things in slightly different ways. If you're going to do that, please, that like silk slips easily, but it does also get caught. Ropes, depending on the rope that you use, if you're going to start using ropes around necks, please make sure you know how the person sweats, what rope you've got, how it responds. A lot of ropes tighten with sweat and with water. Anyone here a rigger or a rope player? We know that's a stupid question. So you have to be very aware. And you even have to be aware about the vibration of rope, because if it hits certain parts of your anatomy in different ways, it's going to cause different levels of damage as to where a knot is and different things. If you're going to play with a buckled belt, I always forget what that fucking little thing is called in the middle. You know, that bit that catches in the hole. You're trying to think about it. I've even written about it. What is that called? Doesn't matter. It'll come. Take it out. Absolutely cut it out. Because if you put a belt, you think it's really sexy, and you're holding it and you're pulling it, if it catches and then you can't pull it, you have to pull it tighter again before you loosen it, and that person's. I mean, you can cause brain damage in under 2 seconds, and somebody can die in under 2 seconds. There's a brilliant video which is actually done for us as a piece of experimentation. And you watch this because people say you can fight it, because like breath restriction is really sexy. A lot of people do solo masturbation with breath restriction, and that's one of the actually still a killer of. It's more statistically likely to be young men and men generally than it is women, and it's a thrill, and it's a nice thrill, and it gives a chemical high, which is what breath play does, that fizzy just before you pass out. But even if you do pass out, what's around you? What's there? I get asked a lot, my child holds their breath, what should I do? And I said, put a few duvets around. That's what you should do. Throw a few cushions down. Because when they wake up and they realise you're not that bothered about it, they will stop doing it. It's just very basic. You will naturally breathe when you pass out. But you can't do that if you're passed out by a blood choke and or something goes tighter, or you're fucking dead. So it's the way it is. So it's how we work. You were going to say something as well.
So the main question, but just to clarify what your, so to speak, stage of life right now, did you just use the word that you now tend, or you now lean more towards being tended to? Was that the word you used? You remember you said tend? I couldn't hear what you said, but I thought you said tended. So
no, I definitely didn't use the word tended, so I'm not quite sure which bit. I very much am demi. For me, it's all about connection before anything else as well, and I'm pretty submissive, and my main kink is actually being a cuck queen. Does everyone know what that is? Okay, so a cuck queen is somebody, so like, if we go back into olden times, like really go back.
The 30s.
No, before that. So if we go back to when we were still killing women who knew what they were doing because they had some herbs. Oh, you're a fucking witch. Hang on, I've got to die to prove I'm a witch, or you're going to burn me alive. Which one do I want to take? So when we go back to those, what times we used to, when we're talking about that repression, some men are talking about cuckolding. So cuckolding is when again, going back to very old traditional relationships, the wife is here, and actually some men, if a woman was a cuckold, there was this incredible brace system that she would wear around her head that was metal with a tongue suppressor in as well. It's locked around her head if she was mouthy. you ever seen those in the history books? They are fucking. I mean, some of you might like them actually. You know, they are. You know, we
Very
do.
expensive. That's all it is.
We reclaim some of those things being a pervert. It's quite fun. I have a strop. So a guy that used to work here had an original strop from the 18, whatever it was, for wife beating. And it was really interesting because it was a handle with a massive piece of leather with coins imprinted onto it. And I was very pink before chemo because that was my ADHD obsession. Now I'm very orange. And everything I have is orange. And he made me a pink strop and he illegally riveted pound coins into it. And that fucking thing will cut you as soon as it hits you and it will leave some serious impressions. So there are lots of things from that time. So cuckolding is when, you know, even from Hamilton, if anyone's seen it, Don't Make Me a Cuckold, is when a woman would cheat in some way, shape or form and completely take away his ability to function because it impacted his masculinity. So if she made a cuckold, or if you make a cuckold out of somebody, it used to be that you would fuck somebody else. However, it goes back to very traditional relationships, man, woman, marriage. So you made a fool out of him. However, there are other men that like being cuckolded. We've got the whole hot wife, stag, vixen type relationships now. We call it different things, and we still have cuckolds. A cuck queen is the female opposite to that. And you can like, whoever you identify as, it doesn't matter whether it's cuckold or cuck queen, who gives a flying fuck? Those sort of things really don't matter. I'm a cuck queen because I like my partner fucking somebody else. I like the compersion. Does anyone know what compersion is? That's to join somebody else's joy, but I also like the humiliation of it. I love the fact that if I'm made to feel worse and bad, humiliation is a huge kink of mine. It's also quite extreme. And I like quite violent degradation verbally. So, and if he comes back and, you know, he'll say to me, she tasted fucking better than you did, you're a worthless fat piece of shit, or whatever, all the stuff that really doesn't go down well with a lot of us really works in my head, I'll tell you what. I've touched myself and I've come in 2 seconds. Like it's that sort of level of, so it has degradation with it, but not all cuck queens like degradation. And for me, there's another bit of it that I write about some of my writings. It's the fact that I'm chosen again afterwards, coming home. So for me, that's part of it in a way. So cuck queen as well, cuckolding. We used to have all these really violent expressions of how we used to control people in different ways. I'll come back to you. Can I go back to your question?
Yeah. Oh, no?
Yeah.
Oh, fine.
Sorry.
No, I was just pulling my eyelashes. I think so I was putting
Sorry.
my hand again. Yeah. So hiding people. How do you deal with
You
it?
don't mean kidnapping and putting in a cupboard?
No, different hiding.
Not Harry Potter
so,
type, I understand.
When you're going, if you're in ethical non-monogamy and your life, you may not even be in the UK, maybe somewhere where it would actively put you in danger to admit have more than one partner. So you basically have to hide. You have the partner that is the one that you have in public, and then anyone else basically has to hide.
Does the partner know?
Oh yeah, everyone knows.
So it's ethically
but it's
non-monogamous, everyone knows, but you have to hide.
But I have to hide some of the partners because
If you have to hide for your life, that's a fucking sensible decision. It's a
yeah, but how
no-brainer
do
for
you
me.
deal with the
It's the pain that being someone's
Yes.
secret hurts.
yes?
But actually, I'm also going to argue, anyone here, Polly? How easy is it to come out to your parents or invite your third partner for Christmas? I did a workshop just before Christmas on how to survive holidays. I do not mean just Christmas. I mean any form of religion, practice. It doesn't matter whether you're Wicca, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Jewish, whether you're Christian. It doesn't matter who you are. There are religious holidays and times that we have and people practice. Even if you
work as well.
Yeah, anything. How many partners do you bring? What do you do? Actually, even people in safe environments cannot bring their partners, and they are secrets. They're not secrets here in this world. Like if I've just called him daddy and stuck my tongue down his throat, here is okay. Little bit weird again in Tesco's, I'm likely to get some weird looks, aren't I? Like that's maybe not sensible for my safety. And having been a queer woman all of my life and actually being in interesting situations, fucking hell, a lot of them put my health and safety at risk. There's marches and different things. I think that's a different question. How do you hold on to the positive of that the people know, that it is for safety and well-being? And then what's going on for you? Definitely talk to someone about what's going on for you when you are. One of my favorite things as a therapist is talking about owning choices. If we choose to do this, how do we own it? When I was having chemo, I remember saying to my sister, who has secondary cancer and was told she had 3 months to live 20 years ago, you know, I mean, I just thought I'm going to copy her. And so, not that I had secondary, so I was like, oh, I'll do her. And she was amazing. She did all my picker and care and everything. And I said to her at the beginning, I'm choosing life. I'm going to do this. I know I'm going to lose my hair. I know I'm not going to be okay. I'm going to turn an interesting colour of grey, which I definitely did. And I wasn't well at all. However, for each chemo, what was hard for me is I had a major reaction. I was hospitalised every time. I was neutropenic. I had blood clots in each lung. I had a blood transfusion. There was a lot going on. I was ill every time. And when it came to the 8th one, I remember saying to her, hi, on the phone call, because I was like, yeah, no, I'm not going tomorrow. I don't have to go, and I can't do it anymore. I'm really tired, and I can't absolutely bear to be in another hospital bed for another week. I'm not doing it. And I remember I said at the beginning, help me own my choice. I'm choosing life, and I want to see this through. And she went, yeah, all right, Deb, shut up. I'll see you at 9 in the morning. I went, okay. How do we feel more empowered when we don't feel that the world is happening to us? When we see things that take our power away, we don't feel empowered. And there's enough of that going on in the world at the moment, everywhere, isn't there? You know, people judge us by the way we look, by gender, by non-gender, by non-binary, by our bodies, by our colours, by our religions. There is enough shit out there already for us to feel like a piece of shit, quite generally. People have always got a fucking opinion on you or a judgment. They just have. You judge me when I stood up here. Don't care what you say. Something in your head went, oh, she could be interesting. Or, oh, fuck is she wearing? Or, she's done to her hair. And I love, I was having my nails done the other day, and this kid walked past me, Mummy, she's got a ridiculous orange hair. And I went, okay. And she was walking past. That is the truth of humans. How do we get our power back and feel empowered?
Age of the child? No,
Huh?
no.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Shut that. Look, we all make judgment. And actually, therapists talk a lot about being non-judgmental. Anyone here a therapist? Have you ever judged anyone?
my pause is just very briefly, and then maybe I can get eventually back to the original question. Which was
Yeah.
I know, but the distinction that I was making, and this is what's going through me, is I make a distinction between discernment versus judgment, which is so loaded. So anyway, so have I? Of course, I've judged.
Yeah.
You know, but what I try to work on is discerning, which removes variety of things.
Yeah. And it also, whatever we call it, it's not about whether you're thinking or feeling, it's what you do about it, it's how you share it, it's what, that's one of the big things, isn't it? I don't know anybody who doesn't discern, judge, and actually judgment is quite an instinctive thing for you in order to know if you're safe. If your gut's going, not sure about that person, listen to them. That's its own form of somatic response and judgment, isn't it? And actually, it's not a bad judgment. If you look at transactional analysis, Eric Berne talks about judgment as a social tool to keep people down, to raise people up, but also to discern whether you are safe or not and how that works. With choice, for me, where that goes is, and it's just a personal opinion, it's a very effective therapeutic process as well. How do you own your choice that I want to be with these people, that I also want to be safe? And actually, this is the right thing to do right now. And I choose to be in this relationship above all else. And how do we work on our responses? We talk about triggers a lot in today's world. Anyone like the word triggered? I have such an issue with that fucking word. Especially if you're on a fetish site that's quite extreme. People are going to write very extreme things. We don't know what's going to trigger anybody. If yours is a can of baked beans or a bottle of Diet Coke because the vacuum was shoved inside your cunt, pulled half your insides out, and I'm drinking it, the word trigger for me gives the world, the environment, and somebody else power. You triggered me. Where's your power in that? Whereas if I go, my pattern dictates my predictors, oh, that's a lovely different flavour when we eventually get down to it. This is my pattern. This is what I know from my responses. Therefore, I feel that. And that enables me to start to change my pattern. So if we make it down to, rather than going to the world isn't fair and it's not okay, how do you see the positives? How do you count them? Your brain isn't designed to count positives. It's not. It's designed to it's hardwired to look for negativity because that's what keeps you safe. That's a tiger.
Self-preservation.
It just the very basics of your brain. So if we can also go into the more positives and looking for the okays in your relationships, I wonder what it feels for you like being again, this isn't a direct question, you don't have to answer it. What does it bring up for any of us being a dirty little secret or a great little secret? What does it mean and why? And there are so many implications around that, whether that's somebody dies and you don't get told, whether that's family don't know and you can't go to a funeral, for example, whether you can't come to a party and you're not accepted in those circles, or if that person's in hospital, you are all really close, but you're not allowed in because you're not married or whatever it is. I saw a guy who was 20 years younger than me for a little while. I don't repeat those sort of relationships. It was a long time ago. Can't be that long ago. I am 58, but you know, that would make that weird, wouldn't it? So his parents were really disapproving. It was horrific, and I drove him to hospital because he'd definitely broken his ankle. I was like, yes, it was bad. And he was in hospital for a couple of nights. And when his parents came in, their comments were, bearing in mind he was nowhere near any form of illegal age at all, were, don't let that fucking paedophile in here, she's got nothing to do with us. That was their opinion. And we've been together for over 5 years at that time. So we are judged wherever we are. And actually, I really have to learn to not let that word trigger me. I have to look at my patterns and predictors. What does that mean? You using that word doesn't make me that person. Kinky people are often seen as paedophiles, weirdos. The guy wrote the other day on FetLife that he's 71 and he accidentally sent a text to his child that was the wrong sort of text to send to his child, and it completely outed him as a submissive man. They all spoke. He hasn't seen his grandchildren in over a year because they don't trust him with them. Those correlations that we make, we are frightened of the unknown, we are frightened of different, and we are frightened of people who know themselves and get into their own power. So for me, it would be, what are your patterns and predictors? How do you re-empower yourself and own your choice? And how do you manage your feelings around that? But they are influenced by thoughts, because feelings come and go. They are in motion all the time. We don't sit with them. They're not permanently there. If they're permanently there, actually that's not just about our emotions and feelings, that is about our patterns and predictors, because they come back to hurt us. We haven't processed them, we haven't done them. Why not? And somatics really matter in this. We can think ourselves blue. However, it's about understanding and respecting what's really going on. Is it fear-based? Is it sadness? What is it? And it's really good for you to look at, because actually, how do you change that situation? If we go into the world is against me, it's not fair, that makes us a victim. And I realise that this might be really, really unpopular. I could turn and tell you I'm a victim of cancer twice, whatever. I'm not. I refuse to take that. I've also been sexual assaults, but the worst one was definitely a very extreme rape where I was in hospital for 3 days, completely passed out, pulled down a flight of stairs with my head hitting each leg of stairs, and there were 3 loads. I was unrecognisable even to look at. However, I also made choices that influenced that. I did. I chose to stay in a room with somebody who was off their tits. And my assumption as a 19-year-old woman was that he couldn't do anything because he was off his tits. Lots of things that how do I own my choices in that? Do I think that he's in the wrong? 100%. Fucking hell, just in the room. And I made choices that added to that. So how do I re-empower myself to never do those things again? How do I own my choice? Why is it so long to be a secret if it keeps you safe? But then what emotions does it bring up, and how do you learn distress tolerance? We are not teaching children effective distress tolerance anymore. I see more and more and more and more and more and more issues. And I've got a 13-year-old client who's had the police phones on her at least 20 times. She hasn't slept properly in a year. She's got autism and ADHD, and the way social services deal with her as well, you have to tell her exactly what's going on when. You mustn't deviate. You've got to do all these things. And then they've come to see me because they've heard about what I do in a slightly different way. And I'm like, can we stop that shit? Well, she can't help it because she's got. No, she can't. She behaves perfectly at cheerleading, which is connected to my daughter. She hasn't got oppositional defiance disorder. She does exactly as she's told. She's a really good person there. She behaves brilliantly. What's the difference between there and home? What's the difference for her? How can I help her? So we're teaching her the somatics of emotions, what's coming up and how to cope with them, how to ride the wave of that emotional quite hard, isn't it? You know, when you feel overwhelmed, when you've just got angry or sad, they're quite hard, aren't they? And we're often also transactionalists about something called racket feelings, whereby we present something to the world, maybe like boredom, but actually we're sad. We are probably happy, angry, sad, or scared at some level. That's the base feeling. How do you get in touch with the base feeling of what's going on, and how do you soothe that? How do you move through it? How do you invite all of those things in? Because if you even start to understand that, you can also understand what the solutions are as well and how you ride that. For some people, it's pain. Can you just beat me, please, till I feel better?
So it's not really so much of a problem for me, but for example, let's say I have one partner and then I work with another partner who cannot, that second partner cannot say
Admit
my
or
partner's
say, yeah.
right. You know, we see each other every day. They might want to come over, hug me, and kiss me. They can't, and that's more upsetting to them. And I understand it is.
Yeah,
it's awful.
I get it. It is horrible, and you are still seeing each other every day. How does this person? I don't know who they are or what. How do they work with their feelings? We often try and rescue someone. We want to help them, but actually they've got to work that out and deal with it as well. So many of us try and rescue other people, and actually it gets us on the drama triangle. We heard of that, the drama triangle? So you've got, as the drama triangle, you've got a victim, a persecutor, and a rescuer. And we've all done this in some way, shape, or form. Like, I used to work on Harley Street, and there I am in the train on the way home, thinking there's no fucking food on the way home. My life is shit. It's 11:30 at night. Fucking train's late. Fuck my life. I bet nobody's cleaned the fucking hob after their dinner and they had dinner. And we start to say things like, we feel very victim-based in that moment. What we don't realise is what that invites. It's like a slippery triangle. If your partner in that scenario feels quite victim-based and quite overwhelmed, we have a tendency to either invite persecution or rescue. So I would walk in, and I'm now thinking, I bet no cunt's emptied the dishwasher. Like, I'm on it. Life is unfair. I got up at 6. Nobody works as hard as me. Oh boy, I'm going for it. And I'd walk in and I'd slam down the hinges, which I probably was part of the reason I broke the dishwasher fairly soon. I pulled it out and I'm like, fucking, it's not too obvious. I'm just thinking this internally, and I start to empty the dishwasher. Oh, then a partner or a daughter walks in. I shouldn't have done that. How was your train trip? Did you have a nice day? Let's say they're just being really civil and adult, and I immediate victim drama triangle. It'd be fucking better if you'd have bothered to empty the dishwasher, cunt. I mean, I didn't quite say it like that. But that's the feeling. So you attack. Now we're on this ice rink. They have a choice. They can just say, I'm out, walk away. That's the most sensible thing to do. It can feel like stonewalling, so probably the best thing to do is say, I'm going to come back in 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes. Can we talk about this in an okay way, please? They could do anything, but they probably slipped on the way in already, and then they have to take the other position, which is either going to persecute me or rescue me. Likely to persecute. What the fuck are you talking about? Don't talk to me like that. What? This is every argument you've ever had with anyone. Why are you talking to me like that? That's not fair. It doesn't matter. I was going to do the dishwasher later. Oh, yeah, right, but it's already fucking midnight. I don't think you were. Or there are any other options. So now we're in an argument, and then they might, I'm still feeling like the victim, but you can shoot between any of these really fucking quickly, and I might persecute them for it. Ha! You've had time all fucking day, because I mean, what exactly do you do? Oh my God, we're now going into these different depths and realms. They might say, well, I help you. I don't want your fucking help, because I don't want to be rescued. And we very subconsciously invite these sort of things. We don't even realise where we are half the time. If your partner feels like it's so hard, we naturally want to rescue, we want to make it better for somebody, but actually we need a very different conversation of what does that bring up for you? How can I be there for you? What would it look like if we can't? Like here, you're not allowed to have sex in the toilets, right? No sexual contact here. You know, if you make that decision to go into the toilets, you could get banned, you could lose your jobs, you could all sorts of implications. How do we own our choices? How do we deal with those emotions? How do we maybe send a little surreptitious text? How do we do something that's still positive? And how do we learn to ride? And I'm going to imagine, and I don't know you, but it must be so hard and heartbreaking to watch somebody you love really struggle and feel shit. Yeah. So then we naturally want to try and help or change or solve, whereas actually the only person is them. If they speak to someone, if they kind of work out what's going on, why for them, what's happening, we can start to heal. if we understand the core emotion underneath, because it's not fair, is often anger. But anger is often, anyone here ever put their back out? Yeah, you know, I don't know about you, but you know, you get to the point where, oh fuck my back, I can't move the first time you do it, and then actually within 2 days you're crawling to the loo, probably pissing yourself, wearing I mean, it's great if it turns you on the biggest pair of Pampers, like you can't function, right? And it's horrible. So the next time you hurt your back, you don't go, oh fuck my back. You go, oh fuck my back. I can't move. Shit, I'm going to be in bed. I'm not going to be able to work. These arrows that are the ow now have a history. So there are 20 arrows. Which actually what we need to deal with is, oh, I hurt my back. How do I, often it's quite stress related as well. How do I help myself right now? What's the ow? And we are shot by an arrow emotionally because of our patterns and predictors. It has a history to it. Every emotion you feel, it's all part of your patterns. Maybe that partner has a pattern of not feeling okay with not being able to demonstrate, not doing something. Kind of only they can work on that. Rather than being a rescuer, what we need to come in as is a facilitator, somebody who can listen and say, what can I do? How do I help that? And what do you do if there is nothing? Because actually you can lose your jobs, lose your lives, lose all sorts of things. Like when we start pioneering couples who are queer, or you know, when we've got different people from different backgrounds, be it religion, race, colour, it doesn't matter all the words, pioneers, like the hassle that they had just for maybe being different human beings, like both being men, both being women, both being non-binary, both being different colours, different religions, pioneered the way for others. It's coming. Polyamory is coming in so many ways. Not as much as we think it is because we live in this world. And then we're left with that, it's not fair. And I would really suggest that they go and get a little bit of support and help. You could even get some help and support together to try and work out quite clever, surreptitious ways of supporting each other and doing things when you can't be open. Anyone here ever had an affair? Maybe don't be everybody, but yeah. Okay, be honest. So it's very difficult, isn't it? Because we can have love for multiple people in different ways, but somebody is hurt by, well, actually I'm monogamous, or I'm not okay with that, or that's a betrayal. And it's just a very similar principle of it's not fair. Why do I have to do this? This is happening to me. And it goes back to disempowerment in so many ways. How do we handle that? We can definitely fight things. I think we need to, you know, what I love about being a queer woman is when that 80s march went through, and actually the people that saved us as a group of people, if you identify as queer or that's who you are, find a trade union. If you don't know your history, like find out. It was the trade unions that came into that march and changed everything to give queer people their rights. That's amazing. Who'd have thought that it was the trade unions? And that was actually started by a group of Welsh miners. Oh, anyone seen the film Pride or read those sort of books? Yeah, okay. So like that's an incredible empowerment to go in as a group of gay men and women at that time. Again, different time, different identifications. We have so many different labels to allow us to be who we are now. It was really binary then. I mean, even if you said you were bi, you were very looked down on in the sort of like, even still in the 70s and 80s. Oh, you can't make up your mind yet, you're not fully there. Okay. But that was your only option. That there weren't many other options for you to be. And those people have like pioneered really big changes, and there are changes coming in polyamory in different ways. And we need to fight for it. But if we're not willing to step up and fight for it, that's one of the differences as well. We know that people in their 20s have a shit ton of energy. I'll come back to you in 1 second, I promise. We have a shit ton of energy, so we're much more likely to do marches, fight, and do different things. I'm old and tired. I still fight in some ways, and I'm always advocating, always trying to push for new research, and I'm more tired than I was then. So I really hope that people do fight. You could go and see someone together. There's something really about how do we ride emotions. Look, most emotions will go anyway by themselves, and we're okay, but it's all about our patterns. What do we deem as negative? Who here has been taught that anger is negative on some level? See, anger isn't negative at all. Anger is fantastic. Aggression is negative. We kind of mix up nouns and verbs around feelings. You can feel as angry as you like, but if you do anger by being aggressive, you just turned into a bit of a twat. Unless, of course, it's a really valid self-defense or anything else as well. Anger is a fantastic emotion that's empowering and enlivening and facilitates you to do so much. But if you've been taught all of your life, your arrows become, oh, you're angry. Oh, no, don't do that. Don't do that. That's bad. Rather than, you're feeling it's fine. Just don't be a cunt over it. Entitled. So again, those feelings that come up, how do we ride them? I have an article that's got some DBT, dialectical behavioural techniques in, and some somatics, and I think there's one for at least every, there's more than that, there are about 68 different techniques, so just in order for us to manage. But the problem is, if you give somebody one and you don't know them, it's not necessarily going to work. It's all about how I ride that wave, because it does dissipate. When somebody gives birth, you go through a 20-minute thing towards the end, not just before you start pushing, actually called transition. Yeah. Emotions are the same. We give birth. And that transition even means that, has anyone been around someone who's ever given birth or watched any program or anything? How many people do you hear going, I don't fucking care, put your hands on me, it's not coming out. Don't ever fucking touch me again. I'm not doing this. Bite someone, does something, because it's so fucking overwhelming. And then all of a sudden, this bodily urge comes to push, and it completely changes that. It's around 20 minutes. We know somatically, if you really get in touch with an emotion for at least 20 minutes, and you kind of learn to ride that in itself is quite a lot. But it sounds like your partner might need to understand what's going on underneath a little bit. Like what is the core emotion, because that then develops into a feeling. But that development is very influenced by culture, how many hours we're hit by. When we get in touch with a core feeling, we know how to handle it differently. So I would really suggest that they have a conversation, and you can look at, why do you need to rescue? What do you want to make better for me? Because it is shit. It's fucking on. It must be really painful to go through and to watch them suffer, and to you when you just want to reach out and touch, and you can't always. I mean, my ex-husband certainly had an affair, and I know he touched quite a lot of us because it was a PA. So and they were quite happy about that. Actually, people knew long before I did. I sang at his secretary's, his PA's wedding. I sang in the church when they got married, and then I find out that 4 years later they haven't had any kids, whatever, they don't want them. But Mike's husband is cited in their fucking divorce 4 years before mine. What twat didn't decide to tell me that then? But do I have a right to know? Like it just becomes interesting. Okay, I'm really aware you've got a question. I'm really aware I haven't finished yours, and I'm really aware you put your hand up as well. Hang on. What hasn't?
Okay. Only one quite a bit of fact, of course.
Yeah.
I look forward to maybe a couple of the books that you've already named, and that you brought in neurology, and since you pulled forth wonderfully, I was wondering if you had anything you wanted to mention as it relates to kink, etc., related to plasticity, and shift and change, identification with versus disidentification, and specifically plasticity and the neurology.
Do people know what neuroplasticity is?
Pruning.
Yeah, it's kind of on a basic level. It's our capacity to change and be slightly different and learn. The way our synapses and neurons fire. And we used to think that our brains became very solid and that they didn't move. But then we learned in the 2000s, funny enough, about epigenetics, but we also learned about plasticity more and more and more. And what we found was that when a caretaker of a child looks at them, their brain's rewiring as quickly as the child's. Whereas we used to think that wasn't possible, which gives us hope around Alzheimer's and different things as well. Learning languages, turning hearing aids up, engaging, doing lots of things. The people who have the longest longevity are actually Sardinia as it goes. And that's because they're incredibly social and talk and have that sort of environment going on for themselves. So it challenges that. There are no specific pieces of research about plasticity and kink. Not one that I've ever found. If you have one, please tell me. I've never found one so far. However, there are lots of really good books and lots of pieces of research about basic plasticity, and then I think we can make our own connections. I would also argue that it's also about the culture you're brought up in, because are you allowed to be who you are? Are you allowed to be gay? Are you allowed to be queer? Are you allowed to be kinky? Are you allowed to hit people? Are you allowed to be non-binary? Are you allowed to transition? And what we know is a lot of families go, no, absolutely not. And I remember watching a film years ago. Oh God, it was about two women who were together and they went home for Christmas. Has anyone seen this film? It's got the woman in who was Bella or the whatever it is, the vampire. No,
Kristen Stewart.
see, we all watch the same shit films, right? So, and what somebody said, actually, I loved it, so I can't talk, but I also watch Christmas Hallmark movies for at least 6 months. So, what was interesting about what happened is that she felt like so cross that this other human being hadn't come out to that entitlement that they should. She couldn't in her family, or she felt like she couldn't, and that's so overwhelming. And what I loved is one of her sort of like friends said to her, "That's a nice privilege for you. I'm so glad you're accepted. But for me to come out, it will kill me and my family." So we just have to be aware. We've all got the capacity to be plastic and flexible. We know that we're forever pruning and changing pathways. The problem is that if you are in the woods and you're walking and you see a pathway that has nettles, brambles, really deep water, very muddy puddles, and you're like, well, I'm not fucking going that way because this one has a bridge, everything's being cut back, you're more likely to take that path. On average, not all of you, you're more likely to take this path. And what's interesting is that is also like our synapses and neurons. You take the most familiar path, but it doesn't mean it's the best one for you. You're better off hacking through this one, and that is plasticity in a weird way. It's our capacity to try and make changes, but with it, all of it comes risk. And there's a great risk with kink because most of what you do is illegal. Anyone here ever had a love bite or given a love bite? Everybody? You've all broken the law. Because you cannot leave, according to the Spanner Trust, more than a trifling or transient mark. A love bite lasts for a couple of days. Technically, that is the Spanner case law. Anyone left a bruise or a cane mark or a blood clot, we leave quite, it's absolutely illegal. And what's interesting, is that one there? Yeah. So, thanks. If you look at the a couple of the acts, when you go back to 1861, the Offence Against the Persons Act, actually you can't give consent to violence against you. But then how far do we take it? I fancy you chopping me up and eating me bit by bit. Is that too far? Or is that okay? I want you to hurt.
But in movies.
Yeah. Yeah, Hannibal Lecter, it's kind of sexy. It's not, is it? We don't live for it. But actually, if somebody wants to die, even our right to die, even our right to, I don't work with safeguarding, I work with beneficence. If somebody says to me, I want to die, and I go, okay, let's talk about it. Why? How? What would you do? What's going on for you? And it's a completely different conversation to, oh, I've got to report that now, that's it, you're out, you know. I had somebody who was so seriously threatening me all the time about what was going to happen and the fact that I would leave them. And I kept it going for so long. Guess what happened? They left me. They didn't keep making their appointments. They didn't keep coming back because it's what, again, empowerment. It's all about that power. So I don't know any books or research on kink and plasticity. I think we have to just look at plasticity the same as we do epigenetics. It's, as again, Richard Sprott, if you really want the latest research, he is NFSW, is that it's an American, but they have such a good, I really wish it was over here. I've offered 20 times, I think 30 times, can I do something like that over here? Can we bring that over here, please? Can I? And I don't get a lot of response, but he is your person. If you want the latest research about kinky motherfuckers, he is it. You had a question, and I'm going to compare him for
neurodiversity, which like ADHD earlier.
Yeah.
ADHD, dyslexia, and all that. Is there a link between those and kink?
Right,
I'm
okay.
curious,
No. It's a question that's being asked more and more. Anyone here have diagnosed themselves as neurodivergent? Okay. Anyone has a diagnosis from the professions to say that they are neurodivergent? And do you know what? Neither fucking matter because it doesn't. And you just have access to drugs, that's all, and maybe a disability card. If naturally, why would, let's say for example, let's take autism and ADHD. I have ADHD. I was first diagnosed in my 20s, which is really unusual because I've got a cunt and I'm 58. So it's unusual. And you know, before the menopause, and I was given drugs, like a lot of women are finding out when they're perimenopausal that their problems around estrogen are very connected to actually dopamine production and potentially ADHD. So it's this massive trend where everybody, can I hear that one more time? It's just trending. So I went, it was quicker for me, this is crazy. So the average waiting time for a neurodivergent diagnosis is more around ADHD than autism, although autism is still 2 to 3 years. ADHD is becoming anywhere at the moment between 3 to 5 if you want a diagnosis in the NHS. And boy, do you have to go above and beyond to prove that you've even got it, especially again, if you have a vagina. It's much harder. It's all the research is based on little boys who ran around too much and couldn't sit still. ADHD is not different gender-wise, and there are some differences as well. So the principle is still the same. It's still about dopamine production. It's still about how we experience it. I talk fast. You can hear it. Fuck me. Try and keep up. I know I do. And I'm very frenetic and busy. However, it's my head that's more busy. So a lot of, because of conditioning and climate and environment, again, I'm really sorry it's gender specific. It simply is, and I can't wait for me not to have to say this shit. But I think actually I'll be dead before that research is out. I wish it were different, but we're all pushing for it. It always used to be little boys that run around too much. See, little girls are conditioned to stay more still, to be quiet, to be pretty, to not be angry, to be sad instead. Anyone here who's been brought up as a woman, do you cry when you're angry? How many of you do? Why the fuck do we do that? And I'll tell you why, it's because it's conditioning. How many, statistically, again, sorry, I'm actually not going to keep apologising. So, in most men, most of the time, do not cry when they're angry. They're simply angry. But little girls are taught not to be angry, that prettiness and contrition and quietness is more attractive in a little girl. And we're conditioned, so we cry instead. But then how many men are angry when they're actually really sad? But they're taught it's much more masculine. I'm going to punch your lights out because that's much more attractive. Well, it might be for me, but I'm a pervert. But it's all about conditioning and culture and how we work, and that's really important. Are there correlations? The fuck knows. It looks like it, yes, because actually though, we're becoming more aware of diagnoses, we're becoming more aware of problems in people and the influence that has. I like to say that, I mean, as I say, my NHS journey was interesting, but then when I perimenopausal, when I'm given drugs, my cancer is estrogen. I take estrogen inhibitors, which stops estrogen in my body because my cancer eats estrogen. It loves it. Nom, 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 Pac-Man, munch, munch, munch. So I take estrogen inhibitors, and I have done for 5 years, and they want to keep me on for another 2. So that means my dopamine production is so much more complex than anybody else's because I have no estrogen. And I'm not as bendy as I was. Like with hypermobility, I could do the split still, lift my leg up, do all this stuff. With no estrogen in my body, that gets a lot harder. And that is related to hypermobility and ADHD. If we know that happens, I went to my doctor and I said, can I have a referral to psych, please? I really want to try some ADHD meds just for the next 3 years. And then I stop taking estrogen inhibitors. So when I get more estrogen in my body, I've got really good coping mechanisms. I've never needed meds. I'm good. And they went, yeah, it'll take 3 to 5 years. I'm like, but I've already got a diagnosis. I don't need one. No, that's just the waiting list. Fuck that. Now, privileged, went to a system, got my drugs in a week. Cost me over £1,000, £1,300 in order for me to do it. And that's utterly privilege based. Are there a lot of ADHDers and neurodivergent on the scene? The answer is yes. But there are also a lot more in the world as well. So we just see our scene rather than saying, if you look at any group of people, I would argue that the numbers are going up. However, for me personally, 2 observations, and these are personal, these are not research, they're nothing else as well. When we have autism, I've got to stop in a minute, but I still know there's another question. When we have autism, what we like is structure. We like definition, and we don't always read other people's emotions very well. That's social cue and everything else as well. What are people good at on the scene? Discussing consent, being really clear, clarification of what are we going to do, what does it look like, and it's your responsibility to talk to me, to tell me. That feeds a beautiful marriage there of I need clarity, I need definitions, I need boundaries, and if we're autistic, we like that. If you think about what you get from being hit or hitting, major drug release you will get some norepinephrine, you'll get a few other things, but one of your major ones is dopamine. So if you're an ADHD hunter, dopamine hunter, dopamining, which is what lots of people call it, one of the things that gives a lot of dopamine that we mine for as we're burying our heads or whatever in someone else's cock or cunt or whatever they've got, that is pure dopamine because it gives us dopamine. And also if we're poly, new relationship energy, the more people we see, the more excitement we get, it feeds the dopamine system. It kind of goes together that is possible or plausible. And there is some research going into that at the moment, so that's happening. So that will eventually come through. So there are correlations. We get dopamine from being BDSMers and or from being poly in new relationship energy, even with the dangers of new relationship energy. And if we're autistic, contracts and negotiation, all of those things, knowing what, because we've pre-negotiated aftercare and all those other things, still feeds a lot of our minds in that as well. There are definite correlations for me, and I don't like, if any of you are neurodivergent, I don't know if that speaks to any of you or you see the sense in that there is research coming. I really want to answer your question as well. I'd like to come back to you as well, Ropey.
Basically, it's about polyamory. I'm polyamorous and like I have a partner, another partner, and I recently came out to my family about it. And it went really well, and it went unexpectedly because I got the Uno reverse card kind of thing from like my sister being like, yeah, me too, and from my mom being like in an open relationship when she was in a relationship that was more like a swinger.
It can be worse in a way. It's not about you two. Don't say don't Shut up. It's about me. I'm coming out. It's my party. Yeah, stop.
Yeah, so it was like weird, but there's a difference between like it's been hard to make my mom understand the difference between like the swingers kind of placement that she does she used to do with the very bad relationship that she was in, but it's still part of what she likes doing, and then what I feel as a polyamorous person towards like having multiple partner or having like being happy about my partners and all that kind of stuff, especially because my sister experienced recently falling in love with someone else on top of like her husband, and she has like 3 kids. And it's like, yeah, it's fine if it's you because you're like young and you don't have kids, but it's not fine for her because she has kids, and that's wrong. And it's like,
and that's a cultural definition, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like she understands the concept up until it's actually like not about her.
She understands the concept from her culture, her experience, and how it goes. And I think what's important in all of that is definition of words. So what's an open relationship? What does polyamory mean apart from we fuck up Latin and Greek together and we make a weird word? So what does it really mean? Because even polyamory, ethical non-monogamy, whatever umbrella we do, means something else to somebody else. And we need those discussions. But culture does come into it. There are more rights if you're married. There are more, you will get wills, everything. If you are heterosexually married, do you know it's even more legally okay to practice kink if you are in a heterosexual marriage? You are much less likely to be prosecuted because, you know, husbands, wives, that's what they do. And we go back into history, and mistresses were okay. If you were like Henry VIII, you just fucking chopped her head off and got on to the next one, and then changed the whole church system, and then how someone gives birth. I wanted to lie down so I can have a good look. What the fuck is wrong with you? They don't come out like that. It's not a good idea. It's about culture, and it's about preference, and it's about thousands of years of practice. And for your mum in her life, potentially, I don't know her, it went okay, it was just about sex, but there's still that heterosexual and or marriage principle of this is what people do. So it becomes absolute. The questions we've got to ask ourselves when we come out and when we have this conversation is we have expectations of people we come out to. We want them to be accepting, but actually they've got their own expectations too. We misuse words like expectations and boundaries. Boundaries especially. Like a boundary is something you're willing to do, not what you put on somebody else. That's called a preference. If your mum's had that experience, I guess the question for you then be, you want understanding and you want her to see your side. What if she doesn't? What if she just can't emotionally, or just doesn't want to, or isn't there?
What baffles me is that apparently she does understand me and my type of relationship, but when my sister had a similar experience as mine and like falling in love with not just one person, she cannot comprehend that because she's in a marriage with 3 kids, and that's not right.
But I do understand that, because her conditioning, I'm not saying it's right, I'm not agreeing with her. Her conditioning says that once you are married, you are monogamous. Once you are married, you just love one person forever. That's the way to be. Sex might be okay, because for thousands of years, people have had sex with other people. It's not okay for you to love multiple people, and a lot of us can't comprehend. Like when my eldest was born, so I've got 4 daughters. I mean, I stopped after I realised I was doing it. But so I've got 4 daughters, like quite close together. And Darcy, my eldest, sort of when I had my 3rd, she said to me, "Mummy, why are you having more?" Like, you're like, oh God. And what she was, I said, "What are you scared of?" And she said to me, well, I mean, fuck me, she was reading books at 3. She was a smart little cookie. And I think she was 4 at the time. And she was saying, well, I just don't think you'll have enough space to love me, is basically what she was saying. And I'm like, oh, sweetheart, my heart is a hotel. It has many floors. Each of you has a floor. And for everyone we invite into it, I just open up another floor. And we have places where we share downstairs. We might eat together and do stuff together. I'm going to come to your floor sometimes and be with you. So the problem isn't the size of my heart or my hotel. The problem is time. It's the restriction. And I mean, I didn't say it in all these words because she's fucking 4. But what I was trying to explain to her is it's a misconception that we can't love more than one person. We also need to define what love is. What is love? I mean, fuck me, if you go back to the Greeks, you've got all sorts of different forms of love. We all understand eros, the love of lust, connection, and that's what we see, romantic. But there are fucking 6 others at least, about family, about friends, about longevity, how we see things to fit multiple people in our lives. Our hearts, you don't really love from your heart, it's a fucking organ. Like it's not just this big, is it? It's about our minds and our concept. And for me, where your mum is her concept of your sister is married, therefore that cannot happen, because otherwise that's a betrayal. It makes the marriage fragile. It means the marriage will break up and we can't get divorced. Can't find a divorced woman. And you haven't got enough time or love, and you've got children, and it comes with so many shoulds, which is what we're all about, shoulds, aren't we? That's part of our expectations. So for me, how do we, even if we don't understand something, the biggest question for me is do you want your mum in your life? And sometimes if you do, one of the things we have to come to is acceptance, which is fucking hard because people are cunts. How do we accept that I'd rather have you having that opinion than not have you in my life at all? Or is it so important to me as a principle that you are so wrong that I don't want you in my life? It becomes that sort of decision. I do understand where your mum's coming from. Again, I don't agree. And that's her conditioning. It's such a big thing, conditioning. Who here was brought up thinking that you get married, you have 2.2 children, a white picket fence and a dog? Like a lot of people, statistically. And it's really hard then, actually takes us back to the beginning perfectly, which is a nice round-off. Our ethics, morals and values are often put on us by somebody else. And marriage is one of them. This is what you do. And it was really fucking sensible. In my lifetime, I was born in 1965. In the 60s was when love started to come in and sex started to come in a different way. It was much more acceptable. It was still really frowned upon if you got divorced or you had a child out of marriage, out of a wedlock. Fuck me, that's in the last 100 years. And if you think about epigenetics, so that freedom for women, I have a Swiss passport as well. Do you know when they got the vote in Switzerland? 1971. I was 6 years old. Yeah, exactly. Look at your face. Fuck. And there are still people being killed for being queer. There are still people being killed for the colour of their skin and their religions. It's happening all around the world still, where absolutely there are still so many countries where, Jesus Christ, actually, sodomy was only outlawed. It was at the Isle of Man. I might be wrong about this, but it's the Isle of Man. It's one of our smaller islands off the UK, and that was in the 60s as well. So men were still being jailed for sodomy. And we think of famous people who changed our lives in the war and did things, who are on our fucking banknotes. There are some amazing people. I know, every day as well. Shocking. They still, it's only 100 years. That is a baby in the scheme of things. So when we go back, we need to go back. This is thousands of years of principles that's being passed down epigenetically. And unfortunately, we do have the neuroplasticity to change, but we've got to want to. And if we change and I make a difference and I choose you or you or you or you for whatever reason, if I'm knocking the status quo, I risk my well-being. And I think that's what she's saying with your sister. That's so potentially dangerous to her for how old is she?
My mom or my sister?
Your mum. Similar to me. Same sort of generation. So, you're born in wedlock. Like in my 60s, or even if she's a little bit younger, you still have the whole Mary Magdalene type Catholic things where girls were sent if they were pregnant even and did laundry for fucking 300 years and then had to give their baby away. Zero choice. Your mum was born into that still, and that is such.
Was the rebel of the family, not.
Was she?
Yeah.
So it's okay for sex because for thousands of years, sex is okay. Only for the last few years are we then starting to look at actually what if we love multiple people as well. And when you test the status quo, Again, fear of difference, fear of not belonging. It's a huge impact. I wonder how you can dance with your mum and even meet her halfway. Did anybody see that transaction? Sorry?
I changed the country I live in.
Oh, okay. But actually, culturally as well. So where do you,
terms,
where,
but like the distance just helps.
yeah, it does. Where do you come from?
Italy.
Okay. Oh. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Let's not. Yeah.
No. My mother's maiden name was Mutti. Like my family is Swiss, but very Swiss Italian. Lots of Italian marriages. I remember growing up, going to Switzerland every summer and Italy because my aunt had a place in Italy. There was catcalling, there was whistling. There's still this thing about your mama's boy. There's still the Catholicism. All of those things have a huge influence as to how it is. And then when we grow away. What your parents lose is fucking control, and they don't want that. And they're scared of that, and that's a huge influence. So your culture, religion, how your mum's been brought up, fuck me, especially in Italy. You think, oh no, it's Europe, it's fine.
Wrong.
Yeah. Well, Swiss women got the votes, I say, in 1971. When I fucking go home, because it is still a lot of my home and a lot of my family there, the wives are still making jam and doing everything and working and doing most of the work. And they've made your homemade cake nearly every fucking day. How do they do that? That's abnormal. I just happen to have made this huge cake. It's just lucky. What did you make one every other day? And therefore, it's a different world. They are 40, 50 years behind, easily. And that again, that's an influence. Your mum is part of that culture. I actually really understand that even more. I do. Catholicism, culture, what mama is supposed to be, how you change, what nonna is, how all these things work is huge. And everyone has a role. And systemic therapy looks at how everyone fits. If you imagine your Fisher Price family toy box, yours cubes, you go in the square, yours go in the circle, you go in there, and we all have a place. And if you don't go in that place, that's when the toddler comes out and takes a fucking great big hammer and tries to whack you in the wrong hole. And then when you change, let's say you're doing therapy or you're not, you realize who you are, you discover who you are, you're kinky, you're poly, whatever it is that you are, there's no box for you anymore and you don't fit. And they'd rather smack you with a hammer to try and make you fit, not always, and some families, even when somebody dies, somebody takes over the other person's shape. So we have to in order for us to function. So it doesn't fit her family system. And if she's not even willing to look at it, you can't change people. This you can't. They've got to want to change. I get so many phone calls saying, my dad really needs to see you. So your dad needs to phone you. No, but he really needs, I appreciate that, but he doesn't want to walk in through the door. There, Carl Rogers, who does personal centre therapy, talks about some great things, but what I love is one thing he does. So if you go and see someone who just sits you and goes, you're getting personal centre therapy. Unconditional positive, but fuck me, don't come and see me if you want that. I'm challenging you to your carpets out from under your feet. And I'm very pluralistic. There's multiple different approaches, from neuroscience to somatics to body work to TA to all of those things. People love systems, and even genetically, we love systems, and we would rather fit in, a lot of us, than come out. Your mum did what was allowed. Come on. How many Italian families still have mistresses and different things and are very much Catholic, unprotected sex, larger amounts of children? Even statistically, we know that. Your mum is part of that culture. And you make choices. If you challenge her and she's not ready, then we lose someone. And they're the choices we make. I understand if anyone wants to go, but you're going to add something or say something to something somebody said.
Yeah, so for the kink community being all inclusive, understanding,
I disagree.
So welcoming, helpful, educational, etc. Do you think there's a time limit on the cancel culture if someone feels offended that we cancel?
Yes. So every time you get a left and a right swing, what you're talking about is fundamentalism. You see it in politics, you see it in history, everywhere. You look at the Victorian era, you look at different things. Some people are underground, everyone comes out, and they've got the free love of the 60s, then you've got the money culture and the more right wing of the 80s, and you've got Thatcher's time, and I'm not talking about politics whether you agree or not. We all swing. And the problem is we tend to swing too far one way. You go from Obama to Trump, that's quite a fucking swing, isn't it? And actually, if you're quite liberal, your social media, it was a real shock to you because you just followed. I'm sorry, if you want to understand what's going on in the world, you need to follow left, but you also need to follow, I don't know, fucking right-wing Nazis, Ku Klux Klan, because then you get a balance. But no one does that. Why? I don't want to. I'm not interested in that shit that those people spout.
And another sort of point, do you think it needs to be something that kink?
Yeah, and it will. It might not be in my lifetime, but it does happen. It does swing, but we don't always see it in real time. And it will, because there are a lot of accusations. Statistically, when it comes to crime, the amount of like sexual assaults, for example, or consent type violations in everyday humans, that when people actually put in a false, now this is interesting because it's not putting false, it's whether it's provable or not, is around 7%. But that's not taking into account the thousands of people that don't put it forward, the hundreds of thousands of people that think, what's the point, and everything else. And there are lots of clusterfucks on the scene where people think they understand something. I really advocate going slow. I really advocate, can I just understand what you mean by that? I want you to be loyal. What does that even mean? It means different things to different people. I want you to hit me. Well, for you, it's gone. For Jordan, it might mean, I even remembered he went. For Jordan, it might mean he's going to kick you till you've got a fucking bruise or take your teeth out. To somebody else, it's naughty. That's what I mean. There's a spectrum, isn't there? There's a massive thing. What is right and wrong? We need to understand even the words. I had a DM quite a few years ago about a young woman who said to me, I've had the most horrific time with my Dom. We've broken up. He raped me. I've had the most horrific time. And my immediate response is one of care. I'm so sorry to hear that. I hope you're okay. What do you want from me? What can I do? I was talking personal accountability. There is no, say it out loud, on the scene, there is no way we can police it. We put systems in place. They always fail because they're half full of wankers half the time. And people who still do those things, because everyone who likes to play with power tries to go into a position of power. So they often like to abuse it. It's really complex. And what you need is somebody who understands genetics, epigenetics, psychology, law, preferably with a cunt, and all sorts of different things, to be that one person who can make those decisions. And then can we also make sure they've got no bias, no history? Like, it's just impossible. We can't do it. The culture that we live in, when she wrote to me, I was like, fuck, I'm so sorry. Like, what? She said, I'd like to tell you what happened. And I please feel free. I'm just aware that when we share trauma, that it might be re-traumatizing. Please be careful. And she just gave me this whole synopsis of what happened. And I've mentioned her before, because she said, we've agreed that when I'm a little, we do not fuck. There is no sexual activity. That's a real good basic agreement. If you are feeling that you are 4 years old, that is a very sensible thing to do. They've been playing quite heavily and they were fucking. And she said, I really need a wee. So off she went to the toilet. As a little change, he said, leave the door open. And as she left the door open, he watched her. And he watched her wipe herself. For whatever reason, that put her into a little space. She didn't say she was in a little space. He could not see that she was in a little space. Neither of them communicated about any changes that had just happened. And we can argue that she got dropped into fight, flight, freeze, friend. We can argue all of that. And he couldn't see it. He didn't know. However, I would argue that actually they did do something new. And that probably isn't the time to put something new in as a shock. We need to judge those things. She came back. They had sex and everything as well. And her definition for her experience, which is utterly valid, was that she was violated, raped, and she was 4 years old, and he went against their agreement. His was one of shock, trauma, can't believe that happened. He had no idea, absolutely broken. And then within half an hour, he was a rapist. Was he? What do you like? It's quite an interesting definition, isn't it? How do we define that? And that's where I go back to those arguments about law, justice, perception, reality, truth. They're quite facts. I was put in a safeguarding position last night, which is just horrific what's going on. And I just look at it and I'm trying to say, the problem is you can't fucking prove that. And this is the problem with law, which is different to justice. You've got to be able to prove it. You try proving it.
Well, sort of, you were saying it's all right to be angry, but it's not all right to be aggressive. You were saying it's all right to defend people.
But then if you attack through your words, actually, the problem is, a lot of us have been silenced. We don't have voices. And actually, sometimes the loudest person gets heard. I tried so hard with my daughter with hypermobility to be heard in the doctors. And, it took me, I'm not proud of this moment, screaming across the reception desk at a heavily pregnant doctor to get the right attention I needed, to then be called in by a friend of mine who is a doctor, and he's a head practitioner or whatever, and he said, Deb, what the fuck has just been going on? And what's happening? And I said, you won't listen. You keep telling me my kid's got anxiety. I've been told I'm anti-mental health. Are you fucking mental? Like, that phrase probably wasn't good at the time. This is my life. This is what I do. And I have ADHD and all these different things. Come on. And he said, well, what do you want from us? And I said, do her a full set of fucking bloods. That's all I've been asking for the whole fucking time. Do this 15-year-old a whole set of bloods. And if I'm wrong, I'll fucking write you a public apology over social media and I'll go away from your practice and I'll never darken your door again. How about that? He went, you're wrong. He did a full set of bloods. Within 2 days, she was called into hospital. She had next to no iron in her system, no B12. She was on the floor. And that's when we started to find out the different conditions and things that she had. I got an apology from the doctors. But the only way I could get heard after 12 appointments of repeated shit was to scream at a pregnant doctor. And this is the problem. We're not listening to each other. We're not hearing what people want. And that is really dangerous in the BDSM and poly community. Because if you're not listening to what your person's saying and what others are saying, it's going to create problems.
There's one meme that hit on Instagram. The way future shows are going, yes, you've got the right answer, but so-and-so shouted it louder, so they're getting a point, and so-and-so is offended by your answer, so they're getting a bonus point.
People are always offended. It's okay, isn't it? I think we have to understand why people are offended, but I think it's about their actions as well. What do we do instead of what we're feeling? And a lot of us have been taught to act out a feeling rather than deal with it. But yeah, it is changing again.
And I would only just very briefly, I don't know what the canceling that is being done, but is that we don't have a ethos or culture of a rupture and repair continuum. So repair is not, in other words, what does repair look like? And that's still challenging.
Reparation there. But on the scene,
a lot of people explained it as it's like a computer game and you only have one life in the scene.
And the scene is quite quick to outcast people. There's somebody at the moment who wrote to my supervisor. He asked me for my advice. This person is starting up a charity. For anyone who is a consent violator, they're offering 6 sessions with somebody off pink therapy, which I haven't bothered joining. Like, there are lots of people who, I'm not paying £80 to be on. I don't even have a website. I'm inundated with clients. I don't do that. I don't need to. A lot of us don't. They're offering 6 sessions. Who says 6 sessions fixes a consent violator? What does it even mean? I've worked with so many consent violators, but just that word is quite problematic, because consent violation can be, I said the wrong thing to you, down to I inserted needles into your anus for 3 hours and put them in your fingernails and I really fucked you up. Like, what does it mean? And we're using generic phrases to attack people. I want to understand more. I love talking to everyone. We need to learn more and understand more in order to help people to repair, to create change. But can you make the stuff I was involved in last night with somebody is a pathological liar who, and this is someone I really care about, and he's had a lot from us. And when a 20-year-old texts a 14-year-old a picture, which isn't sexual, but it's sexy, I don't care what the picture is, cross the line. Cross the line. And at what point do you then say to that person, well, you've clearly crossed it? No, I didn't send it. But that's your body. You can't prove it. Accountability, those 2 bracelets that you're wearing that we know you even wore on December, bought one on December 16th, is clearly you. And all the other stuff matches up. Now, I can't prove that in a court of law, but you need to get out of the fucking gym because you can't do anything. Is that cancel culture? I actually think it's the right thing to do, and I think it's moral and ethical and it's important. But when you've got consenting adults, like the other PhD I want to write is the principle of moral shame as an injury around retroactive withdrawal of consent, which relates back to what that person was saying, is if something goes against your morals, your ethics and your values, and you do something and you regret it, you're also very likely, you can't withdraw consent after, unless there was coercion, unless there was something else done, or if it's your stuff, how do we own it? It's such a fucking complex principle and field. It is horrific. And I don't want to try and fix it. So many people have asked me to do that sort of stuff. Can you head this? Can you do that? No, it is a poisoned chalice. I've done my fighting for us, for our rights, but someone else can take that now. It's too hard. That's not one I can fix. Until we get less angry and less vicious. Like you even sit and driving, don't you? Do you not think people are pretty angry nowadays? Yeah, no. Like, are you all right there? What's happening for you? Or the viciousness that people come out with, the attacks, the lack of care is pretty horrific. And it's easier to cancel. The same as it, if you look at racism, anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim, doesn't matter what you look at, it's about hatred for different, unknown, whatever. And whether you like it or not, it's very much men's tone, especially white men, especially white middle-aged men.
I have to cut you off there so we can concentrate.
So like what's happening in our culture, and also fuck me, I know so many consent violators on the scene. They're actually proven and they're a bunch of cunts and they still keep hiding. We don't out them, but we out other people for doing next to nothing. Like it's very confusing. Please check who you're playing with or who they are. Please keep your safety in mind. Please. I know you think, oh no, it's fine, they've told me it's fine. The highest levels of STIs and different things are actually people in their fucking 50s. So not 17 and 18-year-olds or 15-year-olds anymore. Because like for someone of my age, if I've got divorced and I've slept with one person, I'm like, I'm safe. And I'm like, I don't think you understand how these things get caught. I had an 18-year-old come to me years and years ago, and she said, Deb, I think I might have caught an STI. And I was like, okay, like, what do you want to do about that? Where are you? You know, there are clinics you can go to. What happened? And she said, well, I was riding him and the condom came off inside me. And you're worried about an STI. Had he come? Yes, he had. This is his history. Okay, that ups, you know, it ups risk for different things. And I said, and you're not worried about anything else? No. If I go and get tested in a few days, that'll be fine. And I said, okay, 18-year-old doing A-levels, really fucking smart. I said, and you're not worried about anything else? And yeah, I give 3 chances and I'm done. And she said, no, why would I? I went, fucking pregnancy. How do you think these things pass around? You've got sperm swimming inside your shit. I haven't. I was riding on top. Cultural awareness, education. No, sweetie, if you don't want that, regardless of your religion and your ethics, you absolutely need to go for the morning after pill. If that's not what you want. And even those fuckers don't work. So like all the time. It's education as well. But people are, we've just come through COVID. Like COVID kids are really struggling with their mental health, their well-being, their awareness, their place. Post office guy said to me, I'm wondering why, Deb, could you help me out? Because everyone knows what I do. So this guy, he works for us, but he says it's beneath him to empty the bins. Because what we're getting confused about is that's your job, that's what you get paid for, but it isn't about your worth. You know, pay me enough to empty the bins. No, I pay you what this job is worth. We're getting our worth so mixed up with everything. And sometimes you have to walk away from the scene for a bit. I walked away for years. It becomes too much and it becomes quite toxic. And toxic people in relationships can go to have very healthy relationships because they're not all necessarily abusers. And what someone's abuses is someone's toxicity, which is someone's okay. And you don't see it until it's too late. In most people, most of the time in relationships and shit. I've gone way over. I'm so sorry. Thank you for coming. See you soon.